Hello and welcome, I'm Raziel. Now, with everything being fair, we do have to hear both sides of the story. And here we go, this is his response to the claims. Alright? So this is basically what he filed afterwards. And honestly, I think they may have delayed this because it was delayed 3 times. And I'm not sure who delayed it, but someone did. Anyway, so the response relates to the claims filed in connection with the above referenced docket numbers, collectively the claims, which were filed by Games Workshop Limited, the claimant, against our client EmannG. The respondent. At the outset, it is important to note that respondent removed allegedly infringing materials from Patreon.com, and Cults3D.com, on January 24th, 2024. This doesn't actually help his claim that much because they were asked to be removed by July 21st, 2023. Just so you have a bit of clarification there, so we do actually have a failure to comply to a cease and desist here as well. Without any admission of liability or a waiver of any respondent's equitable rights, defences or remedies, but in the interest of trying to settle this dispute and in connection with the ongoing settlement discussions with claimant. As discussed in more detail below, the claims filed by claimant each stem from the same allegation that respondent extracted certain materials from Total War Warhammer video game, the game, which was developed by the video game developer Creative Assembly, and published by the game publishing company Sega Corporation, Sega. However, instead of identifying the game as the infringed work in the CCB claim forms, claimant has identified other registered copyrighted works, as in herein defined, and has not provided any proof that respondent has had access to or otherwise copied such works, per the CCB guidelines. A claimant must provide proof of registration prior to submitting a claim. This is actually kind of hard with copyright because even in America you don't actually have to register anything for copyright. It's kind of weird that they've asked for this because you don't. If you see a bit of artwork and that's automatically copyrighted to the person who created it or the person who contracted it to be created, basically. In the instant case, each claim is based on the alleged unauthorized reproduction of the materials featured in the game. Accordingly, since claimant has not provided proof that it owns a valid copyright registration in and to the game, claimant has failed to comply with CCB guidelines. Notwithstanding above, there is no substantial similarity between the works at issue and the 3D design materials that were created by respondent, collectively the designs, as evidenced by certain representative examples set forth in section 4c below. Moreover, claimant is attempting to claim ownership over ideas such as genetic creatures and other designs that commonly found in science fiction, which ideas and of themselves are not protected by copyright law. Additionally, to the extent that any of the designs are determined to incorporate protected elements of claimant's work, it is respondent's position that any such incorporation thereof by respondent contributes fair use within the meaning of 17 US Code 107. Finally, as discussed in section 2c below, claimant takes the position that the alleged harm done by respondent exceeds the maximum amount of damages that claimant can ask for. Yet, as evidenced below, the chief executive of claimant's company reported that in 2023 year-end May results, claimant company reported the highest level of sales and most profit claimant's company has had in the last 29 years. The registered works protect certain figurines that consumers can purchase for use in connection with playing various tabletop games that are manufactured and owned by the claimant. The tabletop games. In contrast, the respondent's designs consist of certain design materials for 3D printing purposes, which can be used to create a variety of 3D objects, including ornaments, lamps, and artwork, among others. Based on the foregoing, it is unlikely the respondent's designs in any way distracted from profits that the claimant could have derived from the sales of its figurines, given that the figurines and designs have different purposes and are sold in different channels of trade. Put another way, claimant does not lose a sale of a figurine if respondent sells one of his designs. Thus, it appears claimants making an excessive demands for damages in bad faith. In the view of the above and other reasons set forth herein, we respectively request on behalf of respondent that all claims be dismissed with prejudice. Right, so we got that bit. So basically they're asking for the case to be completely dismissed on those cases. And they're kind of flimsy, saying, they didn't actually cost GW money. GW didn't lose any money due to this because they made record profits. And the copyright stuff as well, again, is kind of difficult because you don't actually have to really register for copyright. The CCB may ask you to because it makes it easier for everyone, but that's just the way it is. Clarification regarding certain general allegations made by claimant. Etsy claims. In each of the claims, the claimant alleges that the respondent sold prints for $65 on Etsy.com, Etsy, and the CCB board should consider these sales on Etsy when assessing the claims. Contrary to what the claimant has alleged, respondent has never offered or otherwise sold any prints or designs on Etsy, and claimant has failed to provide any evidence whatsoever regarding these allegations. Accordingly, any claims relating to Etsy have been made in bad faith in absence of any proof that respondent was in fact offering any of his designs on Etsy. Respondent's counter notification to Patreon does not establish any willful conduct on the part of respondent. Claimant states in each of its claims that respondent's counter notifications to the above referenced DMCA notice shows the willfulness of respondents' allegedly infringing actions. Critically, claimant has chosen to ignore the fact that pursuant to Section 512G3 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, an individual who has been accused of offering infringing materials online has a right to submit a counter notification to a DMCA notice if the individual has a good faith belief that their activities are non-infringing. Thus, respondent's counter notification does not establish any alleged willfulness on his part, but rather establish and evidences that respondent had a good faith belief that the designs were non-infringing. Moreover, as stated, the CCB damages handbook, the CCB is prohibited. God, I've just skipped that. The CCB is prohibited from considering willfulness in a damages determination. Thus, any allegations with regard to respondent's alleged willful conduct are irrelevant in this proceedings. Claimant has not proved that it has suffered any harm from alleged infringing activities. Claimant is a publicly traded company with a market capitalization of 3.18 billion British pounds, $4.06 billion, as of the date of this filing. As previously discussed, claimant has asserted in each of its claims that harm has suffered by far exceeds any damages that the board may award. Yet, an article published by the Sunday Times on 26th of July 2023 contains a quote from the claimant's chief executive where he said, "We finished the year having delivered 8 consecutive years of group sales and profit growth. In the period we reported the highest level of sales and most profits have generated since flotation 29 years ago. See Exhibit A attached here too." Alright, it's back there. Now, I'll get that in a minute. I've lost my place. Here. Sorry. Attached here too. According to the Sunday Times article, profit before tax at manufacture of fantasy figurines grew to £170.6 million in 2023 from £156.5 million in the year before. The foregoing statement confirms financial information contained in the 2023 annual financial report posted by claimant on its website. See Exhibit B attached here too. Claimant has not provided any evidence that respondent's designs in any way detracted from any profit that the claimant could have derived from the sales of its figurines, which are protected by registered works, and it seems unlikely that any designs offered by respondent would have detracted from any such profits, due to the different purposes for which the figurines and designs are intended for use. Based on the foregoing, and given the claimant has publicly disclosed that its profits continued to grow during the relevant years, the designs were offered by respondent, it appears claimant is pursuing excess damages in bad faith. Applicable law. Elements necessary to prove copyright infringement. To establish copyright infringement, a plaintiff must prove 1. Ownership of valid copyright, and 2. Copying of constituent elements of the works are original. See Feist Publishing Inc. versus Rural Television Service, Co. County 499 US 340 345 111 St. Clair. I'm not reading all about 1991. Basic with direct evidence of copying often is unavailable. Copying may be inferred where defendant has access to the copyrighted work and has accused work is substantially similar to copyrighted work. Atari versus N.A. Philips Consumer Electronics. Substantial similarities when an accused work is so similar to the original that a reasonable person would conclude that the alleged infringer unlawfully appropriated the owner's protectable expression by taking material of substance and value. Incredible Text Inc. versus Virtual Text Inc. Fair use. Pursuant to the Fair Use Doctrine codified in Section 107 of the United States Copyright Act, certain uses of copyrighted works for purposes such as criticism, comment, news, reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research may serve as a defense to a claim of copyright infringement. In assessing whether a use of copyright work constitutes fair use, courts must consider the following 4 factors on a case-by-case basis: the purpose and character of use, including whatever such use is commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes. 2. The nature of a copyrighted work. 3. The amount of substantially of a portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. And 4. The effect of use upon the potential market for value of copyrighted work. And foregoing fair use factors must be explored, weighed together in light of purposes of copyright. Campbell versus Acuff Rose, Inc. Claimant has failed to satisfy elements required to prove infringement. Claimant has not proved ownership of the game or the characters. Claimant has alleged that the following works were infringed by respondent, which are collectively referred to herein as works and individually as work as applicable. Chaos Corn Bloodthirster, Great Unclean One, Lord of Change, Karanak Fleshhounds, Great Unclean One again, Flamers of Tzeentch, Blue Horrors of Tzeentch, Chaos Bloodthirster, Greater Demon, Skulltaker, Skaven Army, Skaven Hellpit, Chaos Blood Crushers of Khorne, Pink Horrors, Orcs and Goblins, Black Orc Boss, and Orcs and Goblins Trolls. Pursuant in the CCB guidelines, claimant must either have a registered from the Copyright Office for the works at issue or submitted an application to register the works either before or simultaneously with filing the claim in order to file the claim with the CCB. Critically, claimant has provided no evidence whatsoever that the respondent had engaged in unauthorized reproduction of the works, which works are the subject of relevant claims at issue. Instead, claimant based all the claims on the allegation that the respondent extracted the 3D files from the claimant's computer game Total Warhammer and converted them into a file format, utilized by 3D printers. Emphasis added. The aforementioned game contains the characters, which appear derivative versions of the figurines that are used in connection with the claimant's tabletop game. The works at issue consist of the designs that were used by the claimant to create figurines. However, the claimant has not argued or provided any proof that the respondent engaged in unauthorized reproduction of the figurines, which are protected by the works at issue. Rather, in support of the allegations of infringement, claimant relies heavily on unregistered designs, which feature in the game. See comparison of claimant's IP and infringing products that are enabled by respondent. Exhibits attached to each claim. Claimant cannot bring any claims based on unregistered product designs pursuant to the CCB. guidelines according to consideration should be given to any unregistered design in the assessment and claims at issue. Since claimant has based its allegations on infringement on respondents' alleged unauthorized reproduction of materials featured in the game instead of the unauthorized reproduction of the works, claimant has failed to meet the first element required to prove copyright infringement. Specifically, claimant has not established that it has a US copyright registration for the game. However, even if such registration does exist, the claim must be dismissed since claimant has not complied with CCP rules and require any proof of registration prior to bringing a claim. Claimant has not proved that respondent had access to the figurines. Claimant has produced no evidence, nor claimant has even argued that the respondent gained access to the figurines, as addressed in section 4a above. Claimant has instead argued respondent extracted certain materials from the game in the absence of proof that the respondent had access to the figurines, which figurines are protected by the works, and notwithstanding the fact that the claims should be dismissed due to the reasons set forth in section 4a above. Claimant must prove that there is substantial similarity between the relevant designs and works at issue in order to prevail on its claims, subject to consideration of fair use principles as addressed in section 4c below. Respondent believes there is no substantial similarities between the works and designs at issue. C. No proof of substantial similarity between works and designs. But below are side-by-side comparison are set forth representative examples on which demonstrate that no substantial similarity exists between the relevant works as discussed. In this section 4c, claimant is trying to claim ownership of certain generic ideas that are commonplace in science fiction, and such ideas in and of themselves are not protected by copyright law. First we have a pink horror here, and it says it's not very similar to these. Or this one. Okay? This is his, and I say no reason they are very similar. Okay? I can see the argument here. I'm not going to disagree with this, but finally I get to read. As demonstrated above table, there is no similarity between the design and work at issue. Specifically, design number 1 contains no colour specifications, and more importantly, does not resemble the work in any shape or manner whatsoever. Can simply put, a reasonable person or juror on the matter would not consider design number 1 and the work to be similar. And in respect of design number 2, while this design does not contain pink and yellow colouring, the specific shades of pink and yellow are different from those shades used in the work. Moreover, the claimant's work is substantially dissimilar to such design due to the fact that 1. The character featured in the design do not have the horns and beak or coloured claws, unlike the characters featured in the work. 2. The character in the design does not have the same distinct protruding tongue featured in the characters included in the work. The designs included standard sword design, which is substantially dissimilar from distinct sword designs featured in the work. The design includes a distinct flame graphic protruding out of a character, and the characters in the work do not have this same distinct feature. There is only one character being portrayed in the design, whereas in the work consists of multiple characters. Right. Yeah, that's a great unclean one, everyone can see that. And that's the really old great unclean one. There is no similarity between the above referenced design and the work. This design does not contain any colour specifications, nor does the character have a sword protruding tongue, unlike the characters depicted in the work. Additionally, the facial features of the characters in design are entirely different, as claimant is well aware. Although the design and the work contains skulls, a depiction of pilot skulls is not copyrightable without more, since its fundamental tenet of copyright law, but the idea is not protected in the original express idea is. See Games Workshop Limited versus Chapter House Studios. That's actually quite clever, actually using them as a reason. That is quite clever for that solicitor. GCW Investments versus Novelty Inc. and Vice Publishing, we've already done that one. Respondent's image. There are no similarities between the reference design and the design. Are one-eyed creatures, have a sword, have small fingers, long protruding tongues, unlike the creature depicted in the work. And again, we've got more blue horrors as well. No reasonable person or juror would find that these substantial similarities in the above design and work. The design has no colour specification, whereas the work has various colour schemes. Moreover, the creature depicted in design has one eye, unlike the two-eyed creatures depicted in the work, and does not have the ankle bracelet, hand or tail accessories, unlike the creatures featured in the work. We got the trolls here. The above design contains no colour. Okay, basically, it's saying there's no colour and there's some slight differences between the two. Okay, and then it's saying these are basic trolls and goblins and things that can't be copyrighted. And it's all the same sort of thing. It's just basically saying there's not enough difference between the two. It is clear that the creature depicted in the design are Cerberus. The designs are no colour specifications. Specifically, the Cerberus in design does not contain a distinct textured spotted pattern. 4 separate legs, unlike the Cerberus depicted in the work. Yes, it does. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 legs. And unlike with distinct horn and toenails, the Cerberus in the work has more importantly demonstrated. In the below table, Cerberus is similar as depicted different Cerberuses. Basically, again, oh my god, this is so long. It's just saying basically that it's more similar to the Cerberus than the actual Karanak himself. Respondents' activities constitute fair use, notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in sections 4a through to 4c above, to the extent that the board determines that the designs contain elements of works that are protected by copyright law. It is clear that any such use of works by respondent constitutes fair use within the meaningful section of 107 of the United States Copyright Act. Purpose and character of the use. The central inquiry when making a fair use analysis of the purpose and character of use of work, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes, is whether or not the extent of a new work is transformative. See Campbell versus Acuff Rose Music. The first factor which assesses whether the secondary work is a transformative work and has been regarded as the second most important element of fair use inquiry. Google LLC versus Oracle. A transformative work is one that has been defined as adding something new with a further purpose or different character, altering the first with a new expression, meaning, or message. While a transformative use is not absolutely necessary for finding of a fair use, transformative works are generally favoured under the fair use doctrine, on the basis that such works are viewed as furthering generally the goal of copyright law, which is to encourage creativity and promote the science of the art and the arts. Emphasis added, indeed, in determining whether a secondary work is transformative or not, courts will consider whether the secondary work fulfills the objective of copyright law to stimulate creativity for public illumination. While the copying of copyright work for commercial purposes is capable of tipping this first factor against finding of fair use, commerciality alone is not dispositive, and particularly when the secondary work is found to be sufficiently transformative in nature. Claimant attempts to argue that respondent created designs for the purpose of allowing members of the public to directly print exact replicas of copyrighted works of the claimant. However, it is clear that the designs are inherently transformative in nature, since, unlike the works, the designs were created by respondent for purposes of educating members of the public in different ways in which 3D prints and 3D objects can be created. And additionally, contrary to claimants alleges, the designs do not allow members of the public to create direct replicas of the works. As previously discussed, there is no substantial similarities between the works and designs at issue. It follows, therefore, that the designs cannot be used to create direct replicas of the works. Critically, the majority of the designs contain no colour specifications that affect the members of the public are free to use select colour specifications for the 3D print, which results in the design. More importantly, 3D prints can be used for a variety of purposes, including the purpose of creating ornaments, lamps and toys, among others. Thus, based on the foregoing, it is clear that to the extent that any works are incorporated in the designs, in such incorporation by respondent for transformative purposes fulfills the objective of copyright law to simulate creativity for public illumination. See Google versus Oracle. The nature of copyrighted work. The second factor requires courts to assess the level of creativity or functionality. As previously discussed, copyright law does not protect ideas, but rather protects the tangible medium of expression in which ideas are embodied. Here, the works issued consist of generic creatures, including goblins, trolls, and orcs, that are commonplace in science fiction. Moreover, the relevant creatures depicted in the works either carry or wear certain standard designs or symbols that are generic and commonplace, including skulls, weapons, bouts, horns, angry facial expressions, and exaggerated facial features, among others. Claimant cannot claim ownership over such commonplace ideas, but only tangible expression of such ideas as embodied in the works. As previously discussed, generic creatures depicted in the works are substantially different from each other, according to the second fair use factor tips in favour of respondent. The amount of substantiality of a portion used in relation to copyrighted work as a whole. In assessing amount of substantiality of a portion used in relation to copyrighted work as a whole, courts will try to determine whether the extent of copying reasonable in relation to the purpose of copying, as noted in Dr. Seuss. This factor circles back to the first factor that extent permissible copying varies the purposes of character of use. Dr. Seuss enters LP versus Comic Mix, citing Campbell versus Acuff Rose. Furthermore, it has been noted that where a substantial portion of copyrighted work is copied verbatim, such verbatim copying is likely to reveal a lack of transformative character under the first factor, or greater likelihood of market harm under the fourth factor, Campbell versus Acuff Rose music. Thus, in addition, for foregoing elements, the extent to which respondent has engaged in direct copying is a crucial inquiry in the fair use analysis. Dr. Seuss enters LP versus Comic Mix. In the present case, it is clear that the extent that any elements of works are included in the designs of such elements, those standard, commonplace, unprotectable ideas discussed in section 4D above, which is explained in the aforementioned section, we have reproduced by respondent in his own original form of expression. Thus, the third factor weighs in favour of finding fair use, the effect and use of potential market value for copyrighted work. The fourth statutory factor, which is regarded as the single most important element of fair use, gives consideration to the extent of market harm caused by particular actions on the alleged infringer, and whether such actions would result in substantially adverse impact on potential market for all the original and the market for derivative works. Harper and Row, Publishers versus Nation Enters, Campbell versus Acuff Rose Music again. In essence, the purpose of the fourth factor is to assess whether the new work serves as a market substitute for the original work, including any derivative works that could be created from the original work. When a copyrighted work has been duplicated or copied verbatim, such copying is viewed as merely superseding the objects of the original work, and thus makes it more likely cognizable market harm to the original will occur. Campbell versus Acuff Rose Music. In contrast, when a secondary work is transformative in nature, market substantiation is less certain, and market harm may not be readily inferred. Previously discussed, the designs are transformative in nature, and since they serve as an educational materials that can now be used to create 3D prints and 3D objects for a variety of different purposes, thus give the works new meaning and expression. Given that respondent has not engaged in any copying of protectable elements of the works, and designs are inherently different in nature by virtue of its intended use for educational purposes, it is clear that the original form, in fact, is as evidenced by Exhibit A. Claimants' profiles have continuously grown since 2016, and it follows therefore that designs are not being used as a substitute. The figurines that are sold by the claimant which are protected by relevant works, with respect for encroaching on claimant's derivative market. Claimant is not currently engaged in the business of offering 3D instructional materials for the purposes of creating 3D prints or 3D objects, such as ornaments, lamps, toys, etc. However, if a claimant were to enter such derivative market, designs created by respondent pose no risks to such derivative market, since, as previously addressed, respondent has not engaged in any direct copying of protectable elements of the works. Accordingly, this fourth and final factor weighs strongly in favour of finding of fair use. Conclusion. Finally, it is peculiar that claimant has not filed a claim for infringement of the game since the alleged act of infringement, which serves as a basement for all claims, is respondent alleged extraction of certain materials from game, since claimant has not produced evidence that it owns valid copyright registration for the game. The claims should be dismissed for this reason alone. However, notwithstanding the foregoing, even if the board determines that claimant has properly filed the claims under the works, the claims should nonetheless be dismissed on the basis that 1. Claimant has not alleged that the respondent had access to the works, there is no substantial similarity between the works and the relevant designs alleged to be infringing, to the extent that the board determines the respondent has used any works which used by respondent constitutes fair use. And 4. Claimant cannot claim ownership of general ideas, concepts such as generic creatures, trolls, orcs, goblin skulls, weapons, horns, beaks, elven ears, or claws, amongst others. And there you go, that's it. Wow. Half an hour. Wow, that took a lot, didn't it? Basically, the claim in return is that he is going to be claiming via fair use and using education as his reason, which would be pretty good. If he could, they would obviously have to prove that's the reason, that he is actually teaching people how to 3D print. And honestly, like I said, I have been reading this through both. I've done all the reading, and the thing is, that may work for him. He may win with that, with fair use, because he is trying to claim transformative in nature. Okay? And a lot of these aren't transformative in nature. They aren't. They really aren't. And to say, oh, these goblins, you can't use goblins and trolls because goblins and elves and orcs are, in fact, actually, non-copyrightable material. So there's that. So, like I said, the fact is he has admitted guilt, which is kind of stupid of him, and his solicitor is probably telling him to keep his mouth shut and not actually talk about this. Let things happen as they do. Let the chips fall as they may. Him coming out talking about it has not been a good move, because if GW does lose this, and the case gets dismissed and all that, then the thing is, they can then take it to federal court. And if he continues going online on certain channels and stuff like that, talking about this, and probably kind of digging it into GW and doing the whole sad sack story, yeah, he could end up in a lot more trouble. Right now, I don't think he's going. I think the educational side of it, saying it's transformative, is to teach people how to 3D print, isn't going to do him any favors. It's a good argument, and also they did use GW as kind of evidence, but sort of that kind of disparages their character, using the Charterhouse one. It sort of like throws GW's character in the mix there. But hey, look, you've done this before. And that was a good move, and that might actually help his case with his solicitor. Solicitor is doing some really good things, but it really does feel like they're literally throwing everything at the wall and they're just seeing what sticks. They are. That's all that's what it feels like they're doing to me. That's what it feels like they're doing. There's plenty in this which kind of feels like the solicitor is kind of wary about whether or not he'll win. He's really trying to push things by showing different cases where this has happened as well, which is fine in precedent, which is often used in law anyway. But it does really feel like this solicitor is just throwing everything at the wall and just seeing what sticks. And hopefully something will stick for him. I honestly cannot see how he could win this, because he's admitted guilt with his Instagram. A lot of the designs they've said have been extracted from the game. They do need to therefore prove that they own the copyrighted material for the game itself, which is a very hard thing to do, to be honest with you, because copyright doesn't need to be registered, but with the Copyright Claims Board it does. So here's the thing: if you paint a picture or something, that's yours. It's copyrighted to yours. No one's allowed to copy it without your permission. If you don't register it, the Copyright Claims Board may throw it away. And if it's thrown away on a technicality such as that they weren't registered, this isn't a good look for either party, in my opinion. Games Workshop weren't fully prepared, and winning on a technicality is winning on a technicality. It's nothing to... He didn't beat them by going, ha ha, I won. He still did it. It's like the whole Freddy Krueger thing, that something was signed in the wrong place, hence letting Freddy Krueger go free, sort of thing. Winning on a technicality is winning on a technicality. So there you go, that's the response. If you're into wargaming and you have watched this far of this very long video of mine, I wanted to just get this stuff out so you know everything and that the truth is out there. It's like you have a actual understanding of everything. You know what Games Workshop have claimed, you know what the response is, you are more informed than just having someone say, come onto YouTube and chat normally. And if you are into wargaming, don't forget, hit Railing Games down below for some, wargaming. Discounted as well. Up to 20% off and free delivery up to £20. There is also... what is it? Forbidden Planet for comics, DVDs, mangas, etc, etc, etc. My merchandise as well. My comics. And Skyforge. Never forget Skyforge and Patreon, because business. Bye-bye.